Great to have Ian Castleberry joining us for our NFL Gold Nuggets feature presented by David Creasman and the gang at DC Creasman Jewelers. Ian Castleberry, so good to have you in, friend. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm glad you guys are getting a chance to talk about this today. I know it's a tough day, but I imagine it's also therapeutic.
It is, and we'll swing back around to that on at the end of the segment. Some interesting NFL headlines to get to though today, and the first question is, why is Jags quarterback Trevor Lawrence speaking out in support of his running back James Robinson?
James Robinson appears to be in the doghouse with his coaches, whether that's head coach Urban Meyer, offensive coordinator Darrell Bevell, or the running backs coach Bernie Parmalee. It isn't quite clear, but Robinson was benched, or at least he says he was benched, or taken off the field for long stretches during the Jags' past two games. Again, Robinson says he was benched, and Urban Meyer, asked about it. Urban Meyer, of course, he's only the head coach, and he's just shrugging his shoulders. Oh, no, it's Darrell Bevell's decision. It's Bernie Parmalee's decision.
Oh, jeez,
you should talk to them. Right. Yeah. You should talk to the assistants, which I don't know if Urban Meyer's one of these head coaches that doesn't let his assistants talk to the media, but Urban Meyer's the one there at the podium, so he's the one who has to answer the question. So Robinson was taken out in Week 12 after he fumbled. He was taken out for 16 plays. Last week against the Los Angeles Rams after he fumbled, he was taken out for 20 plays. Now you would say, yeah, Robinson's definitely being punished for fumbling, and that looks even more like the case after Carlos Hyde, who actually is an Ohio State running back. Funny how I don't know if Urban Meyer would favor him for any reason for that, but Carlos Hyde fumbled against the Rams in that game as well, and he was back in there for the next series after fumbling. So I don't know what sort of games the coaching staff is playing with James Robinson, but Trevor Lawrence, the Jaguars quarterback, has had enough of it. And he said James is one of our best players, and he's got to be on the field. And Trevor Lawrence, he knows. The Jaguars offense, they're better when James Robinson's on the field. He's rushed for 678 yards. He's averaging 4.9 yards a carry. So clearly, he's better than Carlos Hyde or whoever else the Jaguars can put in at running back. And, enough. He's had enough of the whatever games that the coaches are trying to play with James Robinson here.
Wow. I mean, you see Urban Meyer, he's acting like a rookie head coach in the NFL, Mike. I mean, he hired the Iowa strength coach who had legal baggage issues with that. He's made some, I think, regrettable comments, and now this as well. He doesn't seem to really know why his star running back was benched. As Ian said, he's the head coach. He's in charge. It all starts and ends with him. That was just bizarre.
And the Bills lost to these people. That's
the first thing.
The Bills lost to this cluster show. I mean, it's poor Trevor Lawrence, who I think's his development's being hurt by this, whatever you want to call it. But it's obviously Urban Meyer is in way over his head. Maybe if they'd kept Tebow, things would be a lot better off than this. But this is just you knew they'd struggle, but you just thought I just thought with Urban Meyer, even though there is a transition from college to the pros. I mean, several college coaches have made the transition to the pros, but I just didn't see this amount of chaos. This is just, I mean, it's the product in the field's bad enough, but I think Jacksonville Jaguar fans knew this, would be for the long haul, especially with Travis Etienne, hurt before the year started, the Clemson running back that they drafted, and knew this would be a long year, but just the chaos surrounding it is just mind-boggling.
Indeed it is, and Ian, it kind of begs the question, I mean, what is his relationship with his players? And, it's not unthinkable to think that Urban Meyer just may spend 1 year as an NFL coach.
I think it is. He's not going to bolt for a college job now. I mean, the big jobs have been taken. Maybe he's going to go back into broadcasting. Maybe he'll take a year off. But I think, one of the key things that we're seeing here, the difference between coaching in college and coaching in the pros, Urban Meyer, he's won everywhere he's gone. So this is a little bit baffling. But I think there's definitely a difference between dealing with, 17 to 22-year-olds and grown men who earn millions of dollars in contracts, in most cases more than the coach. And I think we're seeing that Urban Meyer's struggling with that, how to deal with professionals, with adults. I mean, Jim Harbaugh struggled with this when he was the San Francisco 49ers, and I think he burned himself out with his players after a couple of years because he was telling players they always got to compete for their position, and, players are like, well, I got a 5-year contract. What are you talking about? So I think there is a difficulty. That is one of the difficulties college coaches face in going to the NFL.
Yeah, it's funny when I asked Shoop about this. Remember the moment when he was feeling up that woman in the bar in Ohio, and he stayed behind. His team flew back to Jacksonville because that's his home area. And Shoop's first thing he said was, "Why was he not on the plane with his team?" Like, that is not a good look. Your head coach stays behind while the rest of the team flies back. He seemed to be gobsmacked by that, and so I think that's kind of what we're getting to.
In college, you probably do that. You're staying back to recruit, maybe. But again, that's the difference between college and the pros.
Indeed. Now, Mike Gore might want to have earmuffs here, but Ian asked, after starting the season at 40-1 odds to win Coach of the Year, Bill Belichick is now the favorite to win. Still some football yet to be played, but are you on board with that? If the season was to end today, would he be your guy?
Yeah, well, there are 5 games left in the season. Certainly after that Monday night effort, I think you can make a pretty strong case for Bill Belichick. And working in a rookie quarterback, a bunch of new free agents, Johnny Smith, Hunter Henry, Matt Judon on the defense. Yeah, I think there is a strong case that he's the favorite for NFL Coach of the Year. I know Cliff Kingsbury is a strong candidate, and the Cardinals are 10-2. Matt LaFleur with the Panthers, Zach Taylor turning around the Bengals. They're 7-5. If I had to pick, I think I would lean towards someone like either Ron Rivera for the Washington football team, or I think Brandon Staley's done an outstanding job with the Los Angeles Chargers. But yeah, Belichick is rightfully the favorite, I think.
Yes, he is. Though we have to, Cliff. I tell you, the Cardinals are 10-2, and no one's talking about them. It's really they've done a great job out there, and they've won games. Without Kyler Murray and Hopkins, though they did lose to Cam Newton and the Panthers, so that's certainly a black mark against them. But, Belichick's done a great job, and it will be shoved down our throat
Here we go.
by the Boston media and stuff and everything. But I will remind everybody there are 5 games left in this season. There's still some football to be played, and the Patriots have had an incredible stretch here, and where the balls bounced their way a few times, and They keep winning, but they've got some more work to do. They've got to bye this week. Let's see if that dulls their momentum a little bit. Then they have to go to Indianapolis. Then Buffalo comes back in there to Foxborough, and then they have a really intriguing game that they end the season at Miami. The suddenly resurgent Dolphins, who have won 5 in a row. If the Patriots have to win that game, it'll be interesting to see what happens. So before we have the Tampa Bay New England Super Bowl that everybody's talking about that's going to happen. That's this. We're going to have a Tampa Bay. Let's just wait. Let's play the season out. So
someone had a nerve hit pretty hard there, but Michael, that's okay because you know what? Here we go, buddy. It's happening.
The Bills make me wanna shout, kick your heels up and shout, throw your hands up and shout, throw your head back and shout.
All right, now maybe not Monday night, but of course our Buffalo Bills takeover question for Michael Gore. Ian, after Monday's loss to the Patriots, how concerned should Mike and the Bills Mafia be in terms of winning that division?
I think there definitely has to be some concern, especially with the offense. We've talked about this all year long, even going back to the offseason with the lack of a running game. I think Mike probably saw this too. Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde bristled at a question from a reporter, Jerry Sullivan, after the game, because the Sullivan asked if they were embarrassed by what happened, and I think that language immediately put those guys, no pun intended, on the defensive. I mean, the defense only gave up 14 points. Now, yes, the Patriots solely ran the ball, but I don't think, put it on the offense. They only scored 10 points. They could not move the ball. So I think despite Josh Allen there at quarterback, I think that's a big concern.
Yeah, Jerry Sullivan is the classic poison pen columnist up there. So wrote for the Buffalo News a long time, and now he's with the Niagara Gazette. And when it comes time to, he's kind of their Keith Jarrett on steroids, kind of like as far as when it comes to ripping people and stuff. And yeah, but to me the problem is offensively. It's like the Bills almost treated Josh Allen like Mac Jones. Like, we want to throw in this win finally in the fourth quarter. They figure out, you know what, we drafted this guy because he could throw in the wind up at Wyoming. Let's just let him throw it. And he threw it just fine in the fourth quarter. He had 2 great drives that unfortunately they couldn't get the ball in the end zone. That's been really their big problem this year on offense. Obviously the running game that Ian talks about, but it's really plagued them in the red zone. You know, if they had done well in the red zone, the Bills' record would be 11-1 right now, because that you can, except for the Indianapolis game, you can point to them falling short in the red zone, and that's where it's been. They've had problems with that all year long, and that's why they've lost 4 very close games. That if they just executed a little bit, yeah, I think their defense is incredibly overrated. It's good, but against a premier quarterback and a premier running game, they have problems with that, and very frustrating evening in in Orchard Park on Monday night. But Ian, if Pat, you and I could have gotten $1 for every time the Monday night crew mentioned the wind, I think we'd all be millionaires and stuff. Because it's like
a little credit Monday night, weren't you?
Could you just bring up a little bit more, guys? Just bringing up Brian Greasy, just bringing up. I don't want one more time. Okay, we get it. You know. And,
I was curious how many people were watching the Manning cast for this game, because this was a big game. This was an important game, and the Manning cast with Peyton and Eli and guests like David Letterman and Joe Buck, they're not in on every play. And I've always maintained that the Manning cast would be tough to watch for a game I'm really invested in.
That's true.
And I think the ratings reflect that.
Yeah, I love the Manning cast, but I'm the same way. I go back and forth, and if it's a good game, that's a great point. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, I don't tend to stay there as long. And not only if it's just 2 really good teams, but if it's just a really close game on top of that. Ian Castleberry with the Wise Guys. Ian, if we can skip ahead, if you don't mind, Thursday night football, Steelers-Vikings. There's word out there, Mike Zimmer, if the Vikings lose tonight, he could be out of a job. Whoa. He's brought that team to the playoffs, nearly to the Super Bowl a few years back. But there's something off about this team, and it seems like Vikings brass is maybe getting a little impatient. First things first, before we get your pick, well, tell you what, give us your pick. Will Mike Zimmer be fired tonight?
If they lose, certainly, and I think they will. Dalvin Cook appears to be rushing back to play in that game, but the Steelers, after beating the Ravens, they're on a roll. If the Vikings, after losing to the Lions, then they lose to the Cowboys in a nationally televised game, especially when I maintain Mike Zimmer's coaching is a huge reason why Minnesota lost to the Lions. That defense they were playing against Jared Goff, that prevent defense, not generating a pass rush, not getting in front of the receivers on that final touchdown. Mike Zimmer's supposed to be a defensive guy, and when you break down defensively like that, that looks really bad for the head coach.
Yeah, and Shoup brought that up. We talked about that. He was just stunned at the where Minnesota had the defensive alignment where they were set up. That did not end well for Minnesota, and that's what John was pointing out. A lot of respect for Mike Zimmer. He coached against him, drove him nuts back in the day, but he was scratching his head as to the defensive scheme being used, especially on that final play. As Ian Castleberry joins the Wise Guys via the D.C. Creasman Jewelers Wise Lines and our NFL Gold Nuggets presented by David and the staff at D.C. Creasman Jewelers. And Ian, I know you didn't know Keith Jarrett well personally, but as a writer, I know you thought a lot as well, and I think you guys got some similarities there. You're both very talented. You both were able to break down a game and kind of get past the surface of things. And, obviously it's a big loss for us, but, your thoughts on Keith from afar.
Yeah, that was my first thought when I saw the news. I know how much Keith Jarrett means to you guys. I know how much he means to this community, and just what a loss it was. Before I moved to Asheville, when I knew I was going to move here, I kind of tried to get a lay of the land in terms of the writers. Like, okay, Jason Sanford, he's the culture, he's the business guy. Ken Hankey covers movies, and Keith Jarrett was the sports columnist in town who was worth reading. And I did get to meet him when I covered the tourists for Jason's site, Ash Vegas, and it was a pleasure to meet him. I kind of half expected him to think, who's this, snot-nosed kid writing for the website who's coming in here all of a sudden, but he didn't treat me like that at all, which, I don't think is a surprise to anybody. And, I certainly enjoyed talking to him when he would sit in with you, Pat, on the radio, and we could talk about a lot of different things, sports, movies, music. I don't agree with Keith's thoughts on Journey, but let's speak well of the man. I am also a Def Leppard fan, so that's a tough call. But the other thought I had when hearing about Keith dying at 62, it's far too young. My father passed away at 61, and I just, in both cases, it's just far too young. There was so much more to be done, and that just makes me incredibly sad.
Yeah, well said, Ian. We appreciate you, man, and all you do, and Keith will certainly be missed, and on this show, certainly on Mondays. There's no doubt about that. And my friend, we appreciate you as always, Ian. Hey, have a great rest of the week.
Okay, take care, guys. Have a great rest of the show. I know it'll be kind of tough, but
thank you, Ian.
Soldier on.
Appreciate you, friend.
Take care, guys.
You got it. Be well. That's Ian Castleberry with the Wise Guys, and Ian's appearance. NFL Gold Nuggets presented by David Creasman and DC Creasman Jewelers.